Hello, welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast. It looks like our experiment worked. We were trialing a new video. We were doing the countdown anticipation for a new look Franchise Tag Podcast for the year. I'm your host, Freddie Hall. We have Andrew joining us. We also have Johnny Bisbee, who you remember from the off season, who came on and did an interview with us, owner of the Off Grid website, which sort of advertise also on that front page as well. Andrew, Johnny, welcome. Thank you. The wait is over, ladies and gentlemen. We finally had it. Week 1, the NFL. We may not have been great in the build-up. We did an episode, but we had a stag do to think about, didn't we, Andrew? We didn't need fantasy. We didn't need a build-up show. We just needed pure NFL fun. That's all we needed, and that's all we thought we deserved this weekend. So NFL, we are back. We are ready to go for another season again. Episode 1 here, return of the NFL. What a joyous weekend it was. What a joyous occasion it was. Fantasy football back as well. New players on new teams. The drafted players from the 2022 draft came to come out as well. Oh, it was just too much to handle. And on top of that, I'm a Steelers fan. So you can imagine by the end of about 10 o'clock in the evening, I was buzzed and crazy. And I had so many mixed emotions. February is a long time away. We've got a long season ahead of us, ladies and gentlemen, but at least the NFL is back now. Andrew, thank you for joining us again. Johnny, again, thank you for joining us. What a weekend it was. We were a little hungover, Andrew, when we got home to watch the games. I mean, the idea on Sunday morning of being able to lounge and watch the rest of the NFL for the rest of the evening on the sofa after the raucous weekend that we had for your stag do. I mean, what occasion we had.
Yeah, absolutely great. I mean, we couldn't ask for more from a week 1. I know me and the lads had all planned to probably carry on the stag do on the Sunday night and watch some football together. But I was like, no, I just want to focus, sit at home and watch. I'm glad I did because I managed to get multiple screens on, watch a load of the games, had Red Zone on as well. So it was just perfect. I was talking to you off camera, Fred. I think there wasn't a single dull game. At a push, maybe the Buccaneers game was a bit dull, but other than that, every single game had something worth watching.
And Johnny, usually the man of the written word. I mean, the website's got plenty to talk about off-grid NFL for this week coming because so much happened. Some ups, some downs, some highs, some lows. We're going to have to see what happens going into week 2, aren't we? I mean, lots to talk about today, isn't there, Johnny?
Oh, absolutely. Just echoing exactly what you've just said there. What a weekend. It's great to be back and, talking about the sport we love. I think, we've made so many predictions over this off-season. It's been a long 7 months or so, but there was so much unpredictable drama on Sunday. Teams who we really didn't expect to be getting victories this early on in the season, picked up some vital wins. So I'm looking forward to the next 4 months and see what unfolds.
Touchdowns, sacks, a whole load of missed kicks. Week 1, here it is. Andrew, if you'd like to kick us off this week with what you're bringing to the table, it'll be the same sort of show we did last year. We was bringing topics. I mean, it is week 1, so there's a lot to talk about, and there's so many subjects we are going to probably touch on today. But Andrew, if you want to get us all kicked off here today, we'll discuss the joyous occasion of the NFL.
Johnny just mentioned there that we made a load of these predictions, but for me, one of those predictions came right. And I said, I've been multiple shows, including the build-up, the Cowboys are so overrated. It's unbelievable. And I think I was right, despite the fact that Dak Prescott is injured and out for what could be 4 to 6 weeks. They looked so poor even when he played. That O-line that I said wasn't good enough was bad. The run game was non-existent, declining. No weapons on wide receiver. I said CeeDee Lamb wasn't ready to be wide receiver 1. What do you have? 11 targets, 2 receptions. What's going on there, and what is for the future for them? Because is it Cooper Rush or do they go out into free agency? But I'm glad, as a Giants fan, that I was right, that the Cowboys were not going to win that league and they were going to be poor.
I mean, it's a tougher game at any time playing Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are a hell of a team. Tom Brady, I mean, he there was the off-season drama with him, maybe retiring, then unretiring, seeming to sort of sign a TV contract already, even though he's still playing. When you get a team like that this early on in the season in your house as well, there is a certain expectation, but you need to perform against them. And it was later in the game that Dak did get injured, and to only score 3 points, it's worrying signs, isn't it, Johnny? I mean, when we talk later, there might be a little bit of maybe we shouldn't overreact about these sort of things, but you're playing a big team early on. This is where you get the wins, where you can get some good wins to sort of establish and kick off your season. And Dallas didn't look like they were at the races for that, did they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even before Prescott got injured, his stat lines, his numbers were really, really poor. They really offered nothing, and the Buccaneers didn't really have to move out of second gear. It was a really disappointing opening day. I think, as Andrew sort of mentioned about one of his predictions, that was always something that we were, sort of honing in on the real weakness of their additions this year. I think they lost so many players that we sort of don't really talk about. I think even on defense, I think, Randy Gregory is such a great player. I think in last season or the last couple of seasons, I think they're going to really miss someone like him. And offensively as well, there's real little positives in their offensive line without Smith. It's one of those. There's nothing I can really get excited about. I think it's going to be a really difficult season for Mike McCarthy and his team.
And it's looking like an injured thumb for Dak Prescott, which upon watching the highlights, I couldn't really. I sort of gauged it was sort of the latter half of the game, but it's worrying signs as well, isn't it, Andrew? If it's 4 to 6 weeks, they've got the Bengals, the Giants, the Commanders, the Rams, and the Eagles, and the Lions. That's the next 6. If missed 4, it's only the Bengals, the Giants, the Cowboys. The Commanders and the Rams. So, but that is worrying now. I mean, he's had a few injuries. He got paid big only a short time ago. There was so much hustling and bustling about whether he'd get paid, whether he would get that contract. Obviously, these things happen. A lot of these things are out of control. It was on a collision with Shaq Barrett, if I can remember rightly. With Cooper Rush coming in now, is this going to really hinder that latter part of the season for the Dallas Cowboys, especially if he's out for 6 weeks?
Yeah, I think it's going to hinder them. I think Jerry Jones has really put that organization in a really tough spot. If you're going to go out and pay your quarterback $40 million a year, you're already highly paying your running back, overpaying him. You're highly paying a lot of people on the O-line that are older. To know that Dak has had several injuries in the past. The last couple of years, has an oblique injury, he's had his ankle injury. They've brought in nothing to really. What's the contingency plan if this all goes, if he does pick up an injury again? So I think they've only got themselves to blame in this. I know it's a thumb injury and no one could have called that, but Cooper Rush as your option. I think they're going to really, really struggle. As we said, they weren't great with Dak, and he was supposed to be the saving grace quarterback like you've seen from Mahomes and Brady, where they can take poor wide receiving calls and turn them into great teams. You're paying him all that money to do that. And it just wasn't there. So for a backup to come in and then be asked to do an MVP season, which is what we were saying Dak needed for them to be good, I think you're asking way too much. And I think they're really, really going to struggle big time. Who knows what they're going to do at that quarterback position, but I think they've got to stick with Cooper Rush because he knows the system. I don't think bringing in and trading for someone else or bringing in Newton or Kaepernick or Jimmy G or anyone like that's really going to help, because he's got to learn the system from scratch again. How many weeks? By the time they've learned the system, Dak will probably be back. So I think they've got to stick with Cooper Rush, and I think that's asking too much of him to win any tight game or big game.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think we saw the news that it might not be as bad as it first seemed for Dak news today, but I think by week 6, they've got to play teams like the Bengals, the Rams, divisional rivals like the Giants and Commanders, who looked quite impressive actually in parts this weekend. I still think the Cowboys perhaps are a little bit better than both of those teams, but you could be talking the Cowboys with just one win after the first 6 or 7 games this year when Dak does return. So that's already their season over. It's going to be a real struggle these couple of weeks, and even when Dak returns.
For me, I mean, with Dak, if Dak's not going to be there, big players need to step up big time. Your Micah Parsons, your Trayvon Diggs, your Zeke Elliott, your CD Lamb. These players need to take a massive step up further if they're not going to go and get someone. I can get where, Andrew, you're coming from with if you get anyone in now, they've got to learn the system. Jimmy Garoppolo, experienced veteran, he could do that. So could Cam Newton. Colin Kaepernick has been put out there. I think it would be ridiculous to bring Colin Kaepernick in without any preseason, without any camp, without anything. I think that would be totally insane. And that's not against me saying I don't want him in the league or anything like that. I'm looking at the scope of this. You need a player who is NFL ready. Garoppolo is NFL ready out of all of them, really, if anything, because he's been in training camp. He's been around the team and he knows systems. Newton similarly as well. However, Newton's had a year off, really. For me, I'd sit with Cooper Rush. The Jimmy G temptation is there. But is the Jimmy G story over in San Francisco necessarily? We don't know about that in the building at the minute. Trey Lance was impressive-ish, I suppose, against Chicago in crazy conditions. Everyone needs to remember in Chicago as well. It was flooded. It was totally crazy there. But injuries have played a key focus, I suppose. I mean, I would like to move on maybe to my Pittsburgh Steelers because there's key injuries coming out there. We'll talk about the game as well because it was sensational with TJ Watt. I mean, one doctor says the season. One doctor has said 6 weeks. It looks like a torn pec. He even said it when he was walking off. It's a torn it. Najee had a foot injury. However, it looks like Najee's going to be hopefully playing week 2. He says he's good to go against the Patriots, but is it wise to push your running back to come back quickly? I don't know. But let's talk about the Steelers-Bengals game because there was a lot of exciting games. But for me, I'm sorry, as a Steeler fan, that was the best game of the weekend in my mind because it was just so to and fro. It was against, the Super Bowl finalists, the defensive impact the Steelers had, but also the impact of the Bengals defense as well. They were really, really good at times as well. I mean, Johnny, for you, I know you have no knowledge of the games, I don't know if you saw the full game, but these two teams, divisional game, the win is with Steelers, but really Bengals won the war in a way because they came out of this healthier, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the Steelers defense, obviously with TJ Watt injured, that's obviously a really big worry. But I think they'll really keep them in the hunt for the AFC North this year. Mitch, I thought was okay. During the game, I thought he played reasonably well. Still think Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy in the next in the coming weeks. I think that transition may start sooner than we sort of expected, but. Yeah, the defense was fantastic. Minka Fitzpatrick was the standout with his sort of numbers in terms of his pick, his block on the kick from McPherson. But there was also some really good outstanding displays from the likes of Alex Highsmith, the linebacker. He recorded. Was it 3 sacks, I think, on Sunday? Yeah, these sort of players, I think, are going to step up. People who we've perhaps not heard of, not heard as much of, as I say, in the last couple of years because of the likes of Hayward and Watts being the standouts on this defense. But yeah, I really do think that the Steelers have one of the best defenses in the entire league and have done for some time. So yeah, I think. Their blitzing was fantastic, and if they can keep that up, then they'll be absolutely fine.
I think that's one of the best Fitzpatrick games I've seen him play, the Steelers. He usually is. He's a fantastic safety, but he really didn't have a great year last year. And the years before that, it takes him 5 games to get that going in a way. And then he has a big impact game. And then he tends to, he have a couple of interceptions, sort of. And then he will go from there and be pretty good the rest of the year. This was impact. Like him and Mixon were just barking at each other the whole game. It was great to see sort of an AFC North rivalry have a bit more fire to it than maybe some of them had in the last 1 or 2 years. Remember a lot of the big hits that we've seen in the AFC North. And I mean, there was big hits this weekend as well, which we'll probably talk about later. But Andrew, for you, the Bengals, is this worrying signs a little bit, or do you think they it was just one of them days for the Steelers where the defense really came out and that they're still easily going to be winning the AFC North?
Yeah, I mean, like we said at the top of the show, week 1, don't get ahead of yourself with what's going on, and to play big teams and winning teams and teams that did well last year. Week 1 is the week to play them because the O-lines aren't fully fresh, are they? And we saw that with the Bengals. Their O-line just wasn't up to scratch, despite the fact they've been out and spent a lot of money on it and developed it. And it's going to take a couple of weeks for it to gel in real NFL time. So I'm not worried about that team at all. We saw they went behind early, and we saw them step it up and get right back in it to be in. If anything, to win it. If Evan McPherson missing kicks, that's not something we saw a lot last year. So I think that's the anomaly that we're looking at really with this game, that they missed a couple of kicks to win the game and get themselves back in it. So they've got that fight, the grit, and Joey Burrow looked great when he was playing from behind. And we've always said that about teams. How well do they play when they're behind? And they look good still. So I've got no issues against a defense that we've all said is incredible. I mean, to lose Watt off of that's nothing. When you're looking at the linebackers, when you're looking at Devin Bush, Miles Jack, Alex Highsmith, you brought in Larry Ogunjobi, Cam Hayward. You've got a great rookie and DeMarvin Leal as well. I'm not worried about that defense. I'm sure you're not. What you've had in the last 5 years, 3 years, you've lost one of your big names every single year. Mm-hmm. And they always bring in someone else, another piece, and it just gels and it works, and someone else steps up. So I think we're going to see that again. And the Steelers, I think we're going to see a lot of what we saw from them. Big defensive plays, big games, and the offense just keeping them in the game and plodding along and being serviceable. I think we said that in the offseason, serviceable from that offense. We'll see you through, and I think you'll be fine. But yeah, I'm not worried about the Bengals one bit. It's week one. It takes a bit of time to gel, and like I said, they played well from behind.
Yeah, they do really well. I definitely thought in that game that the Bengals could take it. I didn't think their offense missed a beat. Though we were very good as a defense, I thought Jamar Chase still looked great. They were unfortunate to get an injury to T. Higgins quite early. Tyler Boyd still played really well. I mean, they still look really great. And their defense wasn't bad either. They caused the Steelers offense a lot of problems. I think they're still going to be in the race this year for that AFC Championship. They've been really good. What was injured for the Steelers last year or the year before, and it definitely impacted. And when you've got such an explosive player, an impact player like him, it does draw the focus to it. He does draw the focus of all them offensive linemen and the whole of the offense, really. So I worry a little bit about the Steelers, but again, you're right, Andrew, in terms of we've lost big players every year, and still managed to string together some wins. So hopefully, we can establish ourselves a bit more. Mitch can ease in a little bit more. And we'll see what happens. I feel like we've started a little bit negatively. We've talked about people not doing great, injuries, sadness, missed kicks, bad things. So I'm going to move on to a player who didn't miss a single beat at all in the late game. And that was one Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota Vikings, the wide receiver who had 184 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, grittying his way right back into the 2022 season as much as he did in 2021. Andrew, this guy's just pure special talent. Every time he's on the field, he deserves to be in that mantra of a top wide receiver. Now, in fact, not just Justin Jefferson, we talk about a lot of wide receivers who really just showed how elite. Devontae Adams moving over to the Raiders. Yeah, the Raiders didn't win, but he looked really very comfortable in that Raiders offense. Jamar Chase looking great as well. Cooper Kupp missing a step maybe, but still looking, still showing what he can do with the ball. Are you impressed by that some of these impact players have just got right back on the horse, back into the season, and how exciting is it for their futures as well?
Yeah, me and Adam have spoke about this a lot, that we find there's so much more value in the college wide receivers coming out these days that it's time to move on from the big paid ones and cash in on these guys because they're NFL ready day one, and they come in and they do this. And then, it's great for Jefferson as well because he went out there and he said, I'm the best player. I'm going to be wide receiver one. And he backed it up with a great performance like that against a rival, which is fantastic. But there's so many great youngsters in there. We saw people move teams as well. AJ Brown moving to the Eagles and putting up the numbers. I mean, I think the Diggs, I don't know if you just watch the highlights of the Bills game, he was shown not once other than like one is touchdown. but
his
he
big
put
play
up,
against Ramsey.
yeah. He had like what 122 yards and sort of 8-9 catches. He had just quietly going about his business and doing great. So there's so many exciting players to watch. And I said that the Vikings were going to be a bit more explosive on offense with their new head coach and the way they play. Again, still not worried about the Packers. They were terrible week 1 last year. So.
And Johnny, for you as well. I mean, we're talking about big name receivers, I suppose, but there's players out there. Gabe Davis. I mean, what a game he had. You say Stephon Diggs had a good game. What a game Gabe Davis had. And there's Tyreek Hill looked decent at Miami. There's going to be some time for these guys to adjust back in and everything like that. But how excited are you for the receivers that are maybe not seen as the first string guys, but I know there's no out and out number one at the books, but Chris Godwin looked really right back on the stretch there. How excited are you to see these offenses work this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gabe Davis. I think the Bills looked absolutely outstanding. I thought on Thursday, very sort of Patriots-like for the past. I thought there's so many people that they can sort of trust who aren't necessarily the main guy. We talked about Davis. He's got a lot of hype this off season about being, he's going to have a breakout year and all that. But yeah, he was fantastic ticking. But I think going back to, Andrew's point about the big names, some of the big names who are returning, who haven't necessarily, over the last year, perhaps haven't played as much or haven't hit the numbers that we were used to seeing of them. Michael Thomas was someone who I thought had a fantastic weekend. Yeah, really back with a bang. And obviously some of the college wideouts, John Dotson, who's probably the number 2 guy behind McLaurin in Washington. Chris Olave looked quite good as well for the Saints. And while the Jets had a pretty terrible day of it on Sunday, Garrett Wilson was a little bit of a highlight. He had a couple of nice plays. So yeah, it's really exciting to see these names who perhaps aren't in the top 5, the top 10 receivers in the league really sort of stepping up and making a name themselves. I'm sure we'll have a lot of change in those sort of top 10s come the end of the year. And yeah, it'll be great to see what these guys can do in the next few weeks.
Speaking of movement, Johnny, I mean, there was players, big name players, on positive sides and on negative sides as well. I mean, one player who, well, I'd say maybe not a big player, so to speak, but a player who's had some history in the NFL now and is not really has opinions divided, let's say. People have wrote him off a little bit. How impressed were you with Carson Wentz at the Commanders? I mean, he did really well. He put a lot of silence to some of the critics for his first game, and I'll talk about the other bunch as well who were at new teams and didn't look so impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Commanders we did a piece today on Off Grid on some of our talking points, from week 1, and I think the Commanders are going to be one of my interesting, a team that I'm really looking forward to watching over the next few weeks. They've got some dangerous wideouts, as we've mentioned, in McLaurin and Dotson. But yeah, Wentz, he was impressive at times. I think the Wentz of old would be fantastic to bring back to Washington. There were some times where we come sort of accustomed to with Carson Wentz. He had a bit of total time with it in Indianapolis, but yeah, I thought overall his stats were great. Curtis Samuel's another guy who had a great game for the Commanders. He found him really well. So I'm quietly thinking that Washington could have a great year offensively. They've got the defensive names to back it up as well. So yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do in the coming weeks. They've got a division. Obviously, the Eagles were very impressive at the weekend, but I still think they're very beatable, as the Lions sort of showed. And then the Giants and the Cowboys, 2 teams who you back yourself, I think, against in this coming climate. But so yeah, I'm very excited to see what this Commanders team and Wentz can do this year.
On the flip side of that, Andrew, I suppose, when we look at the quarterbacks who did move, I mean, Baker going back to Cleveland, Baker losing against Cleveland, Russell losing against the Seattle Seahawks, Matt Ryan only getting a draw with the Houston Texans. Is that just week one jitters for these new guys at new teams? Because Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson, very established, great quarterbacks in this league. Someone who I absolutely adore, and obviously Baker, a player who I don't adore, but he really had a moment to sort of stick it to the Cleveland Browns, and didn't really work out for him. It seemed like after the game with Russell and the Seahawks, though, everything was quite amicable there. Him and DK had a really nice moment, it seemed like.
Yeah, Shelby Harris wasn't as complimentary though, was he?
I've not read that. What happened?
Oh, they interviewed him after the game, and he was just like, "That's why when you trade players, we step up and we show you what it's all about." And at the end of it, I think he went, "That's right." I'll
have to watch that.
Yeah, he was. Obviously he was in that trade. I don't think he wanted to leave, but yeah, you should watch the interview they do with him after the game, because there was a lot of emotion in it for him, I felt. So that was quite nice to see. But obviously, yeah, when the biggest upsets, I think the Broncos sort of lost it themselves, really. I mean, 2 fumbles on the goal line from 2 reliable backs. They should have put that game to bed. I think Russell Wilson did enough to get them over the line. They just weren't great with the ball. As for the Panthers and Baker Mayfield, he was late to the building, hasn't been in that team very long. I don't think he played badly. He was, again, a guy that when he was behind still stepped up and still was in the game all the way to the end. And they played against a team that the only thing we said was wrong with the Browns was the fact that they were unsure of what they were going to have at quarterback. We knew they were a great defense, and it showed again. And Mayfield, I think he was a bit unlucky not to come away with a win in that game. I think he had the chance as well. It's the Matt Ryan one that you've got to really have a look at and wonder what happened, because they should be beating that Texans team with the pieces they've got. They all said preseason, this is the team that's strengthened in the offseason, and Matt Ryan being at the helm and Jonathan Taylor, they have put in a couple of nice bits at wide receiver with some of their younger guys, but they didn't overly throw the ball that much, which we thought was going to be the case. But Matty should be in the points towards the end of the game is why you brought him over, to get you over the line and win those close games. And it just wasn't there for me. I felt like Mayfield had it. I felt like Russ had it. And I love Matt Ryan. I thought this Colts team would be a dark horse one to watch out for in the playoffs. Still might be. It didn't work early doors with Wentz, and it picked up, and they looked great towards the back end of the season. It may be a little bit about that. Like you said, week one, we're going to keep saying that. It's just week one, divisional rival. So the Texans might have been up for it a bit more. So that was a bit of a concern for me, that display that they put on, because it was very flat and it just wasn't exciting like some of the other teams, like the Lions. They were still exciting, weren't they? So that's my concern there. I've said it with the Giants last year and the year before. We weren't exciting. And if you're not exciting, the fans will be on you straight away. So you can't just hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor and say, that's what we do now, because it's not enough. It's not enough. And they need to be lighting it up and doing the business. And then if they do lose these close games or tie these close games, you won't be as harsh on them and the critics won't be there. So that one for me was where the question marks really looked.
Would you agree, Johnny, with that?
Yeah, very disappointing, I think, for the Colts. I remember seeing a stat on Sunday. I think no team gained more yards than the Colts offense on Sunday. But, I think it was around 15 or 16 teams scored more points. What Andrew says is absolutely right. You've got to excite, in this league. And there were just parts missing. I think a lot of it is down to the supporting cast. You can rely on Jonathan Taylor as much as you like, but it does become a point. I think they have some big names on offense. Still, they've got the highest paid guard in the league. The line wasn't incredible, but it comes back to it. I think it's week one. Don't get carried away. I still have belief in this Colts team to be a genuine force in the playoffs. I think they should win the AFC South. with a little bit of ease. Having watched the Titans game, I'm not particularly sure how they're going to end up this year. So yeah, I think it's just one of those days for the Colts and Matt Ryan. I'm sure they'll pick it up in the coming weeks.
Now, I would just feel just awful if I got to do this podcast and just talk about the Steelers and not let you guys at least mention your teams for a minute and talk about how happy you were, or how sad are you, or how the positives that you saw in your team. So, Johnny, I mean, you're a Jags fan, right?
Jets, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I think even worse.
Well, yeah. What did you see from the Jets this game against Baltimore? I know it wasn't, it was 24-9. You could argue a team like the Ravens should be up putting more points on you. I thought there was positives in the game, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think I mentioned Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner as well. Glimpses of his potential. There's been like our lockdown corner for the next few years, which is brilliant. I think Everton, the Jets, it's the hope that always kills you. I feel even with the difficult storylines of the last couple of weeks with Zach Wilson getting injured, Becton getting injured, I still felt optimistic that this team was going to improve. Even in week one, that's not necessarily to say that I thought we'd beat the Ravens. They're obviously a brilliant team, and like you say, we restricted them to just 20 odd points. But yeah, I really didn't see much to get excited about on offense for us. Joe Flacco threw the ball almost 60 times, and there were only.
I thought you were just going to end it there. Joe Flacco threw the ball, and you're like, that's what I'm not excited about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a struggle. I think the first few weeks, I can't see us winning a game for. We've got the Browns and the Bengals up next, two, exceptional defenses on their day, and with Flacco at the helm, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult. So, we shouldn't overreact. There is plenty of time left in the season. I still think this Jets team, if Wilson can get back and start progressing like we're expecting him to with the pieces around him, we can still hopefully pick up, I think, 5 or 6 wins. But yeah, we're very much in another rebuild of a season, which is frustrating. But yeah, that's the way we live, I suppose. It was obviously pleasing to see the Patriots really struggle on offense against the Dolphins, who look very impressive. But yeah, again, I'm still not sure I'd back the Jets against any other divisional rivals this year. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I'm being very pessimistic as usual on our chances.
Of course, going over to the other New York team, playing the same stadium. I thought you were a Jags fan. I don't know why I thought that, even though you were on for the Jets. I think just last minute was thinking about it. So to the Giants, I suppose, same stadium, same team, I suppose, in a weird way. Problems, Andrew, happy with some of it? I mean, you came away with the win. You must be really pleased with that against a good Tennessee team.
As a Giants fan, I don't think there's anything you can be disappointed with in that game. We went in it with a lot of injuries, and a lot of guys that haven't seen a lot of NFL football played well. I thought, let's not take it away. That Titans team's still a decent team. It's not the team that it was, but still a good team. So the performance that we put in, I was really happy across the board. I think a lot of those defensive players that came in that filled in spots played very well. The O-line looked loads better. Daniel Jones, again, we gave him a very simple playbook to play. We didn't take him out of his comfort zone too much. But I don't mind that week one. What we saw from him was the fact that he only missed 3 passes. So his completion percentage has gone up. That was the biggest issue. Yeah, he had a fumble, but the big thing is Saquon's back, and he's back with a bang, and he looked like his old self. Last year, we saw him sort of timidly running at people, or not really, but we saw him run through people this week, and I think that's great for a Giants fan to watch. And we saw some wide receivers catch the ball that Richie James sort of step up. There's nothing as a Giants fan. We weren't overly exciting, but we were exciting when it needed to be, and we went for the win, which I thought was great. What have you got to lose as a Giants fan in that game? You drive down the field, you kick to tie it up, and probably lose on the coin toss and lose the game, or you go for the win. And it's nice to see us go for it and put it all out there, and with a new head coach as well, putting his first win on the line. It's great to see, and I'm really pleased with how we've started. Again, I'm not going to be overly optimistic and be like, yeah, we're going to win this division now, and that's going to be great. I'm not going to put it out there like that, but there was lots of stuff to like from it. Equally, I think Johnny was a little bit harsh on his Jets, to be fair, a little bit earlier. I mean, I thought if you're playing the Ravens and you keep them to like 50 rushing yards, I think that's a tick in the game plan box, isn't it? So yeah, I think he's a little harsh on his Jets, but yeah, as a Giants fan, I'm pleased. I'm pleased week one. There's a lot of nice things to take from it.
Certainly there was, and I'm very interested to see with the Jets and the Giants moving forward. It's going to be really fun to see what's happening over in New Jersey. Player that maybe didn't play for your team but really stuck out week one, Andrew, as a wow sort of prospect, maybe a player from the draft, or maybe a player that we know is good, or someone that really caught your eye. Because when you sit down and watch Red Zone, I mean, I watched a bit of I watched Steve's game, then of tiredness, I didn't watch all of Red Zone or anything like that. But it's usually a player that you go like, oh, I feel I'm going to be hearing his name week on week doing something. Was there any player like that this week for you?
I mean, it's not necessarily, wow, this player really stepped up and had a real good game, and I'm really excited to watch him play. The player that I was excited about watching, and I really want to back in this year, was Justin Fields. And I thought he put a lot of the haters quiet. You know, he silenced them, because I felt like he played really well. He had no O-line whatsoever. Like if you watch the game, he still got beat up, but his ability to move and get out the pocket and still make plays and throw the ball downfield with a lot of consistency against, again, another good team. Yeah, the weather was bad, but you know, it was bad for him as well. And I felt like he really stepped up and showed, all the haters are saying we're rubbish, we're not going to win, and I'm not good enough. And he really showed me that he is the guy that I thought he was, and he can break that Ohio State curse for quarterbacks, and he will, fingers crossed, be exciting every game. So for me, Justin Fields was one I was like, yes, thank you, I enjoyed that.
There's certainly a difference, though, being an exciting, young, good quarterback, but the team's still losing a lot, which I still feel like they will. Do you think there's a difference there, surely, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, like the Lions. We said this about the Lions. They didn't win many games last year, but you wanted to watch them every week, didn't you? You still wanted to watch them.
They were competitive,
and for me, I think Justin Fields has given you that little edge that you might go, I might tune in and see how he does. See if this guy is the one. So, like for me, it was more about what he can do, and I'm excited about him. So I'll be definitely following to see if he can do better each week, even if he doesn't win. Same
question over to you, Johnny.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Andrew said there. Half of the game against the 49ers, but really showed, his true sort of potential. I think he looked a lot calmer and just a lot. It was a year two sort of game. You know, he wasn't a rookie. He matured a lot, I think, in some of his plays. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him in what is a really weak looking Bears side this year. But my rookie, I think, that stood out, I think he came on 3 or 4 times at Red Zone. He was always making something, a play out of something. Was the number 1 pick from last year, from this year, sorry, Trevor Walker. He was, what was it, a sack, an interception start on your NFL debut. It's pretty impressive. He kept appearing, and I think we're going to see a lot more of him in this Jags team, which, I've watched the highlights back from that game, and I didn't really get anything excited about too much on both sides of the ball. I think there's a lot of issues still there, I think, for the Jags. But Walker is definitely someone who, it's a progressive player who's, going to come in and hopefully do wonders for this team. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do over the next coming weeks and months for the Jags.
Yeah, I think he's certainly exciting. Both players are looking pretty exciting. I mean, Trevor Walker was a player that I was going to mention earlier on, a bit of it really, again, in a weird way, like the field sort of silenced the haters in a way, because a lot of people were very critical about him being the number one pick and not Aiden Hutchinson, not other players, not Kevin Thibodeau, not Evan Neal, all sorts of different players. And he was number one pick, and he really did spring onto the scene in this Jags game, and he did look really, really impressive. I think for me, my player, and it's I've mentioned him already, but Gabe Davis. I just think Gabriel Davis is such a great number 2 in that system, and he just provides that something for Josh Allen. I know there was talk about Isaiah McKenzie's not quite the slot guy with Cole Beasley now not being there, and that was a really great dynamic having Beasley and Diggs, and it felt like Gabe Davis was the other guy in that trio, whereas now it feels like him and Diggs as a tandem is just going to light this league up. He could be the best number 2 receiver in the league at the minute, alongside someone. I think he's really that explosive. I'm really excited to see what he can do this year moving forward with the Bills, who I think are maybe on a train to that AFC Championship Super Bowl, but I've not been silent about that one I suppose. Andrew, Johnny, thank you for joining me week 1. I mean, we're trying to get used to the NFL as well. I paused Johnny for what felt like ages a second ago on his mic, and it was only for seconds. But I was trying to pause myself. I feel so bad, Johnny. I do apologise. But we're trying to get used back to our podcast, I suppose, even though we've been doing it all summer. But there's going to be lots of shows for you this season. There's the main show on Tuesdays. We're going to be having the fantasy show on Thursdays. We're going to be having the show on Sundays as well as the preview show. If you don't want to watch podcasts, don't want to listen to podcasts, you can go and have a look at Johnny's website, the Off Grid NFL website, where they have fantastic articles wrote by a whole plethora of really great writers over there. Lots of interesting stuff going on here at the Franchise Tag and at the Off Grid website as well. We hope you'll join us every step of the way moving forward for the NFL season. I hope it's going to be an absolute cracker. I'm sure we'll enjoy it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you check out Off Grid NFL as well. Until then, have a good rest of your week. Don't worry if you lost week 1 on fantasy. There's plenty more weeks to come, and for your teams as well. Enjoy. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Johnny. Have a great rest of your week.